Hello Gobs and welcome back to another video. I am the Goblin King, obviously. Who else am I going to be? If you don't know who I am, subscribe, become a gob, you get to join my Goblin Cave or my Goblin Kingdom, my cavedom. I don't like the sound of that. That sounds raunchy. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to see more TTRPG content like this. I do other stuff aside from reading stories. Sometimes I do rants, or sometimes I'll go and review system. Just know I do TTRPG stuff and I do video game RPG stuff. I'm an RPG gob all around. So if that interests you, go ahead and subscribe, hit the icons, whatever, the usual YouTube lingo. Today we're reading more RPG horror stories. If you have an RPG horror story of yourself and you want it to be maybe possibly read on this channel, you can type it in the comments. You can go to my subreddit, that's also in the description, and leave it there. Or you could just straight up send me an email and tell me if you wanted to post it anonymously. Again, you can always put them in the comments and I'll still read them. But if you don't want them to be in a video, just let me know and I won't put them in a video. And as with always on these RPG horror stories, these may or may not be real, but even if they're fake, okay, I'm not saying they're fake, I'm leaving that up to personal interpretation, but they are fun to read and give advice on. So without further ado, with the intro out of the way, let's get into today's stories. Oh yeah, by the way, like the new room? I've been working on it for some time. I wanted to spice up the backgrounds of my videos and even the thumbnails, you know, that frame. It's also changed. So I hope you guys enjoy this new art update. It's kind of like my 100 subscribers special. But without further ado, let's get into today's horror stories. Our first story comes from Kai Lee Lady. I think that's how you say it. DM demands I wear costumes, drink IRL potions, and don't play male characters. This isn't that crazy, but here's my entry. So I live abroad in Taiwan, and a couple years ago I was trying to find a game to play in as I really had the itch to play, because I hadn't since I had lived in the States. I posted on a foreigners group asking if anybody was interested in playing, and I got some interest from this guy who said him and his girlfriend were going to start a game up and it would be her first time. I was kind of excited about the idea that there would be another woman in the group because I had bad experience abroad with all guy groups. He had pitched it to me as roleplay heavy and kind of relaxed because he didn't want to scare away his girlfriend. He said it would be chill. That unfortunately turned out not to be the case. The group chat is where it really all started to go bad. It wasn't anything insane, but the guy was just really insistent. I already hate group chats, and this guy was messaging at all hours of the night and getting kind of upset if we didn't message him back quick. No big deal though. I know DMing is a lot of work and probably he was anxious to get stuff set up. We were going to play Lost Mines of Phandelvers. Pretty good for a beginner session. I mean, that's with any module. Go in and add your own things to it, just so it's a bit catered to use. But Lost Mines of Phandelver, you know, it's a pretty good place where most people get their D&D start. Which I thought it would be good because it is the opener module and he said his girlfriend was new. After a while of setting up the game, he started to lay out some rules that were definitely not chill. For example, one of the things he said was that we needed to all be in costume because his girlfriend really liked the idea of dressing up, but didn't want to feel like the odd one out. I effing love doing weird bits with costumes. That's actually one of my favorite things, but I just got a bad vibe that he told us that we had to, because I also can't guarantee that I'm going to have a costume every single time, considering I was going to have to ride public transport to get there. He was also going to make potions, and whenever we drink a potion or any consumable, we were actually going to have to drink his alcoholic drinks that he would put in these potion bottles. Again, a really cool idea and concept if it comes up organically, but I just find it weird that it's like, no, you have to drink my vodka shots every time you want healing or any other potion. The final thing that really got me was that I had created a male character and my husband had created a female character because why not? He all of a sudden started asking lots of questions about us and making sure this wasn't some kind of kink thing, which it absolutely was not. I just wanted to play a male character and I thought it was weird that was the first thing he jumped to. On top of this, he kept interrogating me and telling me that he didn't think that I, as a woman, could do a convincing male voice, and that it would probably make immersion for his girlfriend. He kept underlining and bolding the fact that this was roleplay heavy and that he expected me to roleplay with a voice, and he demanded voice notes where I did male voices. I just kind of ignored this because I know I can do it and this isn't a job. I assured him I've been roleplaying for a long time and I was in theater and he shouldn't worry, I will bring the roleplay. He really wouldn't give up on this point, and I was not going to do this, so I just kind of stopped responding after a bit. That's when he went absolutely nuclear, sending me like 30 messages about... Why do I keep messing up messages? Messages. That's when he went absolutely nuclear, sending me like 30 messages about how he'd spent like 1,300 USD on sets and costume pieces and modules, and I was like, well, I didn't ask for all that, not my problem. Anyway, I blocked him and decided to start my own campaign as a first-time DM. Been going on almost 2 years now, and it was the best decision I've ever made. So happy, ending all in all. Well, guys, I'm glad she got out of there when all this stuff was happening. Having to wear costumes, that's one thing, especially since they're taking public transport. Not everyone's okay with doing that in public. But the second part, having to drink alcoholic shots in order to drink a potion in game, yeah, that's pretty bad. Don't do that. That's the thing. If everybody like agrees to it, then maybe, or I don't know, don't make it be alcoholic or something. I don't know. Just don't make it a rule that people have to drink something in order to do something in the game. Again, like they said, cool in concept, but should be kept outside the thing for like events. Not like every time you do a session you have to wear a costume or drink these alcoholic shots. But the one thing that gets me is her not being able to play a male character, which they didn't really specify about their husband playing the female, because did the DM get mad at the husband for playing a female, or was it just her for playing a male? I'm assuming it was to both of them, because in the story she had said that he was interrogating her, but he had also asked them both if it was some type of weird kink thing. Look guys, your character is not you. They are a fictional character. I don't think I have to tell you this, so you can play whatever gender that the character is without it having to come back to you. You don't even have to roleplay that heavy. Even if it's like a roleplay heavy, you shouldn't enforce super heavy roleplay, sort of like they did here. Like, that's making my immersions. You are playing a wizard or something, you're playing some type of warrior in full suit, swinging a sword like it's nothing. You're saving off blows that should kill you with just 8 hours of sleep. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of immersion. Like, I get it, some people really love that deep immersion roleplay, but even then, if this is just a chill game, as the DM said, then all of that shouldn't really matter. It shouldn't really matter how roleplay heavy the person is, as long as they do some sort of role-playing with the other group, or even if they just state their character actions in the game. Not everyone's super comfortable with role-playing as their character, and just saying what your character does should be pretty fine enough. I don't think you have to put on your voice to have a good character. But I'm also glad that she was able to start a new campaign and became a DM and went on for 2 years. So I'm happy about that. Good job. You didn't let it ruin your experience. And you, like I said, most of the time, if you're not happy with a certain group, just go and make your own group. And you can't do that all the time, but sometimes that's the best option. Let's move on into our next story. Our next story comes from Odinde. Not safe for work warning. That's with all these videos, obviously. DM turns Curse of Shroud into a Yu-Gi-Oh! Collectathon and commits in-game essay against a player's husband. Essay warning. I can see why I picked this story. I just went and grabbed stories. I read the title and a little bit into it, and then I posted into like a doc and saved it for later. Yeah, I can see why I picked this. I play some tabletops. I have some Yu-Gi-Oh decks. I don't play at game shops. I play with my friends, which is the best way to play most trading card games. So I have played a bit of Yu-Gi-Oh. I played some Master Duel, so let's see how this turns out. I'm not sure if that's going to be relevant at all, but let's see what happens. So essentially, I was running 2 different games a week at my local TTRPG bar. My job got extremely busy to the point where I could only commit to 1 day, so we reached out online to try to find a replacement DM for my Thursday group, and I would still run for the Wednesday. Found a guy who I will refer to as DM who joined the latter 4 for the campaign I was running on Thursday in order to get to know the players. Seemed fine, kinda quirky, but in this hobby it's hard to be picky. He didn't seem to have any red flags from the time that I spent with them, which to be fair was minimum. So he decides to run Curse of Strahd, which is cool. I recently ran it at this time and I loved it. I told him that the players would probably have a great time with it. That was in fact incorrect. As with most people who play Curse of Strahd, all the time I see Curse of Strahd horror stories, or at least listen to them all the time. It's almost always Curse of Strahd. You never see probably a couple Path of Phandelvers and other D&D modules, but Curse of Strahd always shows up. Essentially because Strahd himself, I heard, is kind of like a womanizer, and I think DMs sort of get their own idea of how Strahd should be played, and it kind of ruins the story. But let's continue on to see what happens in this Curse of Strahd. Flash forward a couple months later, and I'm hanging out with a couple of my Thursday group people, and they pull me aside and we ended up talking for over an hour. Here are some of the main things that they had concerns with DM. He did a lot of homebrewed for Curse of Strahd. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, but he literally turned the game into a Yu-Gi-Oh card collectathon. The players were tasked with going around Barovia and collecting not 1, 2, 10, or 50 Yu-Gi-Oh cards that all had Yu-Gi-Oh monsters they had to fight, but 100. 100 Yu-Gi-Oh boss monsters that they had to go around in Barovia and fight to collect their cards for reasons unknowns. This also allows the players to summon the monster in Curse of what? If you know this module, you know that's totally whack and completely destroys the balance and mood if you're able to summon up to 100 monsters per fight. Needless to say, the players were not enjoying it, nor does anybody at the table even like Yu-Gi-Oh in the first place. The DM added some potion called the Potion of Lust and Death House that had the lore of the owner of the house essaying the maid that then created a horrible abortion monster in the basement. And now the players had this potion that could charm someone like that. I'm not even going to lie and say that I dislike the change to the monster in Death House, but the way he went about it was very uncomfortable. Especially when the lore very clearly states that it was a consensual relationship to begin with, and now it's not. Foreshadowing is a literary technique used to... Any art the DM had for his custom NPCs that were female, all were extremely sexualized. Talking like ridiculous anime-sized chests, y'all know what I mean. Like, we're not talking about just normal seductive vampires who use their looks to bring in their prey. We're talking about any single person who identifies as a female in the game all have inhuman-sized chests. Oh, should I mention as well that he also gave very explicit descriptions of every single female NPC in this way along with the art that he was posting. Like, every single woman had to be described as buxom, big chest, tight butt, etc. Perhaps that point isn't necessarily that bad, but it's kind of the thing that hints to a female NPC being described as walking up to another player, forcefully kissing him, and sticking her tongue down his mouth with much more in-depth descriptions than I don't bother to give here. He then asked the RL wife of said character to make a performance roll to hide her surprise, discuss. This is a fetish. She apparently looked very uncomfortable and upset at this interaction, as it was apparently stated in the Session 0 notes that there wouldn't be any kind of content like this. There are some other details that I didn't list here, but overall I reported this to the general manager of the bar, and I will be taking over the table moving forward. Luckily my job is not as busy as it has been when I had to leave, so I have time to run this campaign for them. Thanks for reading. Edit. Oh man, I just learned another funny detail that luckily didn't involve SA. Apparently DMs thought that a player's idea for a Grung Monk was OP due to poison punches in Curse of Strahd, where the main enemies are undead, or at minimum resistant to poison if not immune. But summoning Yu-Gi-Oh monsters each turn was balanced? Oh man, there's a lot to unpack here. I would just like to say, yeah, the whole Yu-Gi-Oh thing, super dumb. First of all, mechanically, that's just awful. Story-wise, that's just awful. You're already taking Curse of Strahd. At least they didn't go the route I thought they were going. As most of the times these scrappy DMs use Strahd as the way to make their story ruin. Again, womanizer DMs get the wrong idea in their head, or just bad DMs think that he does stuff he's not supposed to, sort of like what happened in this story. All I'm trying to say is, usually Curse of Strahd is ruined by how people portray Strahd. However, overall here, it was just the DM homebrewing Yu-Gi-Oh stuff in 2 Curse of Strahd, that just completely ruins the mood and the entirety of the campaign. Again, the whole summoning 100 monsters per fight, yeah, that's pretty dumb. And then him being mad about the poison resistant punch and a heavy undead campaign, yeah, that's pretty stupid. Why is he getting upset when he's literally letting them summon up to 100 Yu-Gi-Oh monsters per fight? You can't talk about balancing when that's happening. And then, well, let's get into it. The whole SA thing. Yeah, that's pretty awful. I don't know what you want them to do when you give them the potion. What do you want them to do with it, DM? Come on, what do you think they're going to do with it? They're probably just not going to use it at all. And adding that whole little tidbit, yeah, I didn't know anything about Curse of Strahd, but I guess I learned something. But the whole SA part, now it's one thing to change the thing, you know, it's still horrible that he had it happen between two NPCs, or not even NPCs, but you know, just characters, and I guess they are NPCs. Usually I think NPC as a character that's actively in the story. This is more just like lore. But even then, that's so awful to change the lore like that, because in the original lore, it's consensual. So it makes it all not that awful. I have a video about sort of the similar dark themes. You don't need these dark themes in your darker stories, or at least even in your normal campaign, for it to be dark, or even, I don't even think it's necessary, but I'll get into that in another video. Let's focus on this story. So changing it to non-consensual, yeah, that's one thing. It's in the lore between two characters. Like I said, so awful. But then straight up doing it to a PC, not good. Do not do it to the PC, especially since in session 0 they said this content wouldn't happen. Yeah, that's already awful, but then letting him sit there and explain each character in details, what were the players doing? Why didn't you guys speak up about this? You guys should have hopped at the first time when he was going in depth, or at least the second time. Don't let him keep going. I'm glad they eventually talked about it, but this should have been talked about like the second time. And from this story, it sounds like they were talking about it a whole lot before they even reached out to OP. So yeah, guys, nip it in the bud. If something's making you uncomfortable, don't be afraid to speak up about it. This is your time, and you shouldn't spend your time being uncomfortable. Even if you have to send a message to someone, or just straight up get up and leave. Even if it's awkward, it's a lot better than, you know, having to spend 3 hours in this awkward situation. It's a lot better just to spend a couple minutes picking up your stuff and just going. But again, everyone treats it differently, so everyone works differently, so find what works best for you. For the most part, I think talking is generally a pretty good thing, or even, like I said, just messaging. So with that out of the way, let's move into our final story. Our next story comes from Prudent Friend 1052. Is my DM too harsh? So this is my first time on the sub, and it isn't a horror story as much as I just wanted clarification on my DM, since 1, this is my first time having him as a DM, 2, this is my very first campaign ever. Well, I'll be glad to answer your questions for you. I'm the Goblin King. I obviously have the final say on everything because I'm the king. I want to start this off by saying I watch D&D quite often on the 3rd campaign of Critical Role, and I play one-shots outside of this very new campaign I joined. My DM has been playing for a couple years now in the module's Curse of Strahd. Now guys, I didn't read this, okay? I didn't pick 2 Curse of Strahd stories in a row, but they said this really isn't a horror story, or at least so they assume. Before the campaign started, he gave out optional backstories, in which I would choose the orphan, which made me the bastard son of the maid and the sir of the Durst family. In the very first session, we walked into the Durst mansion, in which it was basically thrown out there that I was the missing brother Walter, which I denied, because I don't know these people and my character only remembers being found in a blanket with the initials WD on it, which to me felt as though it would be this big revelation that my character would struggle to accept since the family has been around so much badness. After the session, the DM texted me telling me straight up that I was the son and that he felt as though there was a miscommunication on my backstory, which I replied with, "I'm confused, that is my backstory." Basically, that I understood I was this person. In the next session, there were new people there, so the DM gave a rundown of what had happened and called me out on the fact that I denied being Walter. I wouldn't say exactly that he called me out, more just a teasing or pointing it out, but it felt as though he was doing that to be like, "Why did you deny that?" sort of way. At some point during the session, we are still at the George mansion and go down to the basement to to find some sort of locked room with a big enemy inside, which knocked out 2 of our companions, and one of them had fallen twice. After the enemy had been defeated, our DM put us in a time challenge of sorts and made us all roll to get over some hurdles. I felt as though I wasn't suited for any of them, so when it got to my turn, I wasted precious time, and after all of us rolling basically successful checks, he went around us all again and wouldn't let anyone re-roll that they had already taken the challenge. The very last roll, 10th, it was my turn, and we came up to a magically created brick wall, which would have been perfect for the barbarian to pull down, but I felt as though I was useless, as I was a rogue and he wouldn't let the barbarian take the roll. Another point to make is that our DM said that if anyone was to fail a roll, the last person in our line would die. Flat out death. I understand D&D has stakes, and I love that, but being level 2, having to roll 10 successful checks to get out of the mansion before it collapsed seemed like way too much. I'm sorry this was long, but I don't want to be spending £20. Oh, heck no. We don't associate with British people. Just kidding. I'm sorry this was long, but I don't want to be spending £20 every week for a long module, as my DM put, if it's going to be this taxing so early on. A couple other things I want to mention is that he banned Tiny Hut because he feels as though it was too OP to just camp outside whenever we want. We also aren't allowed to take long rests outside of a safe area, so in the wood. And if you fall prone next to an enemy and get back up, they can take an attack of opportunity against you. Guys, I think this is a horror story. I know poster didn't say this was a horror story, but this sort of feels like a horror story. I mean, just starting out, the whole first section, yeah, that's a mixed communication. I can kind of see some giveaway. The DM should have explained it just a bit more, and then the players should have, I guess, rolled with the punches a bit more, then talked about it after the session, sort of like they did before going into the next one, so that everything was cleared up. But then, everything after that, well, that shit is classic Death House, first of all. That's this whole Durst Manor. I'm pretty sure this is just Death House. I'm pretty sure. I want to say it is because it sounds like Death House, but I don't remember the whole 10 successful checks. It kind of sounds like a bit of homebrew on that part. But yeah, they're right. 10 successful checks in a row, probably not likely. You can get a couple depending on how easy the checks. I mean, if it's all DC 5, then you're going to pass most of them. But if you fail one check and someone would instantly die, yeah, that's awful. I do not like when players could instantly die. Well, as in having to do 10 successful checks. Now, if you're doing a check or several checks, as long as the stakes are determined beforehand, then the player knows that, hey, if you make this check, your character might instantly die or be pretty close to it. Are you sure you still want to make the check? Then that's perfectly fine, because the DM has let them know that, hey, your character could die from this, and now the player understands that, hey, if I make this check, I'm going to die from it. So let's see if we can do something else, or go ahead and attempt to make the check anyways. Therefore, the instant death doesn't feel as bad, but all in all, instant death is still going to feel pretty bad, because deaths should have a bit more meaning to them, rather than just, oh, you failed a check, your character dies. There should be some sort of story to it, because after all, this is a narrative story. But just, oh yeah, a beam falls on you and your character dies. Again, it's the whole having to make 10 successful checks is what's killing me. Let's talk about these homebrew rules. First of all, banning Tiny Hut. I don't think it's that OP, I guess. Seeing as it's still in the game and I don't really see anybody else complaining about it, I'm gonna go ahead and say Tiny Hut isn't as OP, or at least as OP enough to ban it. And then not being able to take long rests outside of a safe area, I guess that's defined. I mean, that's kind of like already in the story. You don't want to like take a long rest in the middle of a bandit camp, or at least in a dungeon where you don't have anything barricaded. I guess it would be on the OP to explain what the DM meant by safe area, but for the most part, this is kind of standard, so I'm guessing there's something else to it. Or as they said here, like in the woods, so I'm guessing if they're anywhere in the woods, they're not allowed to take a long rest. So yeah, that's pretty dumb. You should be able to let them make some rolls to set up camp, or let them go on watch, and then let them take a long rest. not just banning long rests nowhere. And then finally, falling prone, and if you try to get up, the enemy gets attack of opportunity on you. Yeah, that's just stupid. Attack of opportunity is already so dumb, but then tagging on another movement thing. What is it, 3.5? I don't even know if that's a thing in 3.5, but yeah, that's dumb. All these homebrew rules are stupid. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that. These are stupid. Poster, go ahead and talk to your DM about this stuff. Bring it up. If they don't change their ways, then I guess you can always just leave. Remember, guys, as I always say, no D&D is better than bad D&D. Or it should be no TTRPG is better than bad TTRPG. But that will conclude our stories for today. Which story was your favorite? Comment down below if you would have done something differently, or just your thoughts in general. I try to read all the comments. I try to respond to most of the comments. I love reading your guys' comments. Every time I have my phone set up to get notifications, and every time I see a comment, my eyes light up. I'm going to be straight up. I love getting comments because I love interacting with you guys. Remember, guys, just be good people. Have a fun time. Don't force people to do things that they want to do. Don't spring up explicit or dark themes on people that haven't signed up for that, okay? That's just a big rule of thumb, I think, for most TTRPGs. If you have your story of your own, go ahead, type it in the comments. Like I said, you could go to my Reddit. I have a subreddit. I don't post anything there. I share my videos that I upload. I think I forgot to do that already. But the Reddit's not getting much traction. But hey, I'm getting followers on Twitter or X or whatever. So go there and follow that for more updates. Or sometimes I post like thoughts on there. I also post it on the YouTube community here. So if you got this far, thank you for watching. Maybe subscribe if you're not subscribed. Become a gob, okay? You get to keep seeing more content like this being read by me. Being read poorly by me, I should say. Look, the cave is dark, okay? Sometimes I can't see the words on the lighted screen, okay? But I hope you, gobs, have a lop of the day, and may your adventures be free of sorrow.